Hello, everyone. Henry Fernandez here again. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I'm going to get right into it. We do have a special guest, and I say a special guest because truly he is very special to all of us. He has written a new book, and I wanted to spend this whole time talking about his book. It's none other than Pastor Kevin Tucker. He is the youth pastor here at the Faith Center Ministries. Welcome, Pastor Tucker.
Oh, Bishop, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your Faith for Life podcast.
Okay, appreciate that. Now, you've been a youth pastor at the Faith Center for quite some time, and I just really want to thank you so much for all that you do to the ministry, in particular to the young people, how you have really devoted yourself to them, and you're doing a phenomenal job, and I just really want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, you've written this book. First of all, congratulations.
Yes.
On this book, The Core Lifestyle. Take the Leap and Win in Challenging Times. I really like the topic, and I have my copy here, so I know it's not readable for most people, but we'll talk a little bit about how they can get their copy of this book. And this is your first book, I take it,
This
right?
is my first book.
Wow, you did well for your first book. Love the cover. It's
Thank
nice.
you.
And the topic. Okay, so let's start out first with this question. What inspired you to write this book?
Bishop, that's a great question. I grew up in an environment that what I experienced the most was fear. And so growing up in my childhood, it was so much dysfunction and so much pain and trauma that the pain really drove me to a point of wanting to really break free. And in my years of growing up from middle school through high school, I was always that guy that was talking to somebody. In fact, people would say, Kevin, you're always talking to somebody. And I didn't understand it in the initial stages of my middle school years, but I later discovered, because people would come to me and they would ask me things about life. They would share with me stuff they wouldn't share with their best friends, their parents, in fact, Bishop, like their darkest secrets. And I would be struggling with the thought that they would even ask me, knowing that behind closed doors, I was dealing with some real issues myself and some pain that I really didn't know how to manage. I was faced with emotions that I didn't know how to process. And it was through those moments that I began to really understand my purpose, that really God placed me on the earth for the purpose of lifting people up, encouraging people, and helping people really live a well-balanced and fruitful life by the way which he placed us on the earth to do. And it really, seeing the pain that I went through, really, I think for me, it strengthened my love walk with God so much that my love for people it really expanded and it blossomed. And I'm telling you, anybody who knows me, they know I genuinely love people. And, we'll probably talk about that later on, the complexity of loving people, and you still have relationship challenges with them. But my love for people drove me to this point, Bishop, of writing the book and using my personal story to really help someone overcome difficult moments in their life, and knowing that it requires you taking the leap in some of the most challenging times to get to that win.
You see, a lot of authors, I think, miss the main reason for writing a book. When you're writing a book, you never write a book just to satisfy your cravings.
Absolutely.
Just to talk to yourself, just to brag about how intelligent you are and what you've accomplished and so forth. What I'm hearing about you and your book, it is that God has allowed you to go through some experiences in life, right? And those experiences, you have now documented them.
Yes.
Placed them in a book to help. I think, because the follow-up question I had was, what do you really want people to walk away with when reading your book? And a part of the answer, and I'll let you, continue. A part of the answer, what I'm hearing from you is that you've been through some stuff. And you want people to walk away with the fact that if Kevin Tucker can get through and live a life with
Yes.
principles and standing in the word of God, that they too can. Is that correct?
Oh, Bishop, you're spot on. I really want people to know, I'm in dealing with people. I have been dealing with people for years in mentoring, coaching, leadership. I remember even back in my childhood days, Bishop, I was student body president of my elementary school, student body president of my middle school, was functioning in a lot of leadership positions in school, and it carried on even up into current day. And so just through my interactions with people, leadership, coaching, mentoring, like I said, I discovered that people are struggling in so many areas. And the one area that I see people struggle in the most is people. It is dealing with people. And I realize, Bishop, the commonality among humanity, it doesn't matter your ethnicity, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic background, how much money you have or don't have. All of us have the one thing we have in common are issues and problems. And I wanted to really be very practical in this book to help people not run away from conflicts. I'm so used to people running away from conflicts. I've seen so many destructive behavior patterns in how to manage conflict that you have relationships destroyed. Communities are broken. Families are in chaos. I mean, look at our nation today. Right. And so I really want to give people an opportunity to be empowered with practical strategies and principles, from our own experience, but on the foundation of biblical truth and God's wisdom on how to deal with life. And so that way you can confront the uncomfortable truth. You can eliminate the unnecessary family drama. Now, Bishop, the key is the unnecessary family drama. Right. There's some that, regardless, there's some things that we just would never be able to eliminate. One of my favorite sayings is, one of my favorite affirmations is, I will not be in bondage to other people's unwillingness to work on themselves. Wow. And so I will not be in bondage to the unwillingness of others to work on themselves. Powerful. If people choose not to work on their own issues, I cannot allow that to cause me to be stuck. And so even with leaders, I really want to empower leaders and influence leaders to really lead in the marketplace with wisdom, truth, and integrity. I think these are three things that are lacking so much in our current society, that we lack the wisdom of God. And especially for my generation as millennials, I don't really think we really hear these terms like we should and really be empowered to really, we don't teach on them as often. The generation, we just kind of do what we want to do. When it comes to the wisdom of God, we lean to our own understanding. But I grew up in a time where I really got a strong foundation with the wisdom of God and truth and integrity. And all of us are challenged in all of those areas. So I really want people to know that, listen, it does not matter where you are in your life. Sometimes you have to go through a dark place and a scary place to get to a place of peace. And if people, Bishop, can ever look beyond the current pain and recognize beyond that current pain, there are some rewarding relationships. There's some valuable moments. There's some treasures that are waiting on you if you can just look beyond the present pain. And so this book is really a book that is really going to empower people. It's going to challenge you to perhaps go back to some uncomfortable places in your own life to really do a self-assessment. Because after all, we really want to get to a place of spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, that also has an impact on our physical health, and all of those things impact our financial and economic health and stability. So I'm really excited about this, Bishop.
People who are watching right now, Kevin, and listening, because the podcast comes into two formats. They can watch it or they can just listen to it. And I know they can relate to what you're saying. And I want to talk to those people out there who at times feel as if life will take you through certain processes and you think it's difficult, it's unbearable. What's the purpose for it? Maybe you grew up in a broken home, a dysfunctional home. Maybe you grew up with a poor family. There was not a good role model of transfer of wealth and good stability and so forth. And you're wondering, is there ever a chance for you to be successful? I really want you to listen to Kevin's comments on how, because as he was talking, what I heard was this: life will create some trauma.
Absolutely.
That you have two choices. You can make it help you to be better. That you end up writing a book about poor lifestyle.
Yes.
Or you can make those trauma make you bitter. And then you live this cycle of failure and so forth. Because, you know, I had a question I wanted to ask Pastor Kevin, and he really answered it. He just dived into it. You know, how did this trauma help you, you know, today? And I'm telling the listeners out there, do listen. I know things may not look well right now. I know it may be uncomfortable. You don't understand, but here is a living proof, an example that when you allow God to walk you through the process and you develop some core values, which we're going to talk about, some core values of believing in yourself, believing that all things are possible, then absolutely, regardless of challenging times, you can make it. So I want to just say this, and we're going to go to the next question, but I want the listeners, I want you to get a copy of this book. There's so much stuff in this book that will help you confront uncomfortable truths head on. And that we always want to push it away and avoid challenges. He's telling you, go head on, face it, deal with it, because if you don't face it now, come on now, you're gonna have to deal with it later. It may be more difficult later. So I want you, the information is on your screen. I want you to order your copy today. Buy one for a friend, but read it. Now, Pastor Kevin, you talked about challenging times. And when because you know, in your book, it says the core lifestyle. Okay, fine, I get that. Core lifestyle, you know, I have a program on television, Lifestyle of Faith, you know, that's suggesting everything is wonderful, everything you're living wonderful and great. But then you threw me off when you said, take the leap and win in challenging times. The big question is, by that, can you really win in challenging times?
Bishop, I got one answer. Yes, absolutely yes. Now, you know, and I'm a firm believer. I am a firm believer, Bishop, that we have to be careful not to be enslaved by our own emotions, that our thoughts are ours to control. And so even when we find ourselves in tough moments, it's so many things that are important when it comes to overcoming tough moments. And one of those things is your thought life. It is the thing that really helped me navigate my way through some of the most difficult moments is my thought life, because that influenced how I saw myself. And Bishop, you know, because it's in the book, you know, one thing I've had to come to realize, this was a very difficult thing for me, but thank God I'm finally at the place. But I know most people struggle with vulnerability because, you know, it's hard to be vulnerable. Let's face it, when we grow up in families, Bishop, we're not taught to have honest conversations, safe conversations, to really, without any prejudgments. And so, you know, and again, in my background, my family life played such a critical role in this. And like I said, for my brother and I, remember for my brother and I, going to school was our outlet. It was a place of peace because home was hell so many days. And it was so volatile. And and it's because there was so much chaos, domestic violence. We experienced a lot of things, and looking at us, people would have never known that we were going through the things that we were going through. And so I'm here to tell people that, listen, it is possible for you. You're looking at a guy who was told the words by a family member, I wish you were dead. I talk about it in the book. And Bishop, I vividly remember that 15-year-old Kevin collapsing at the thought of what just happened. And Bishop, I don't know, but something rose up on the inside of me that I decided to make that day about a different type of death. That I said, you know what? It's going to be the death to all of my insecurities. It's going to be the death to the things that have held me back. It's going to be the death to how I view myself. And it was in those early stages that I'm already seeking God on wisdom and getting in his word. How do I even manage all of these issues and the stuff that I'm facing as a young person? And then it carried on to some of the things that became triggers in my young adulthood. This is a time, Bishop. I mean, if you look at the rates, divorce rates are near double. Domestic violence is up. Our nation, our government is in chaos. You have people struggling with relationship issues. People are struggling pursuing their own goals and ambitions because perhaps they've been counted out so many times. They struggle with the idea of really grabbing a hold of their best future because they dealt with jealousy so often. People have dealt with rejection. There are so many different things that people are dealing with. And I'm here to tell you, as a living witness, I overcame the thoughts of suicide. I know what it is to deal with rejection, betrayal, low self-esteem, insecurities. At one point, it became frustrating. I got tired of hearing the prophecies of what God is going to do for me. And I got tired of people seeing greater in me when I was still struggling with the fact that, how do I even get past it? I can't even see beyond this moment. But when I got to that place, that's why I say, if you could change how you view yourself and your thinking and look beyond the current and the present pain. But it's rough. This is not an easy road, Bishop. I know it sounds good on the other end when you overcome, but I have to be real with people. This is not an easy path, but it has to be an intentional path. And you got to know, aren't you worth it?
Wow.
Aren't you worth going through the pain of discomfort to get to a place of freedom in your life where you can really experience God's best?
And you know, when we're talking about challenging times, you know, each and every one of us go through our own personal challenges. It's different. Some people hearing you speak right now, maybe it's not the low self-esteem issue. Maybe it's a problem on the job. You know, maybe it's problem with the finances. It's a medical condition. You know, they have
absolutely
that's threatening their very life. Maybe it is family crisis, as you said, you know,
absolutely,
relationship and so forth. But everybody's problem cannot be taken lightly. And each person have to deal with that. And out of your problem, I mean, I'm getting a chance to look at your book here, and it focuses on family relationships, leadership, and personal fulfillment. And we're going to talk a little bit about those 4 areas. But what I sense is each and every one of us, out of our challenges, out of our personal experiences, will birth these core lifestyles. You know, these core things that becomes the center of who we are. And in your book, I wanted to read it because I find this very interesting. and I really want the viewers, I think you really need to get a copy of this book, because I think all what he's saying so far, we all can relate to it. It says jealousy and competition. And then you had the nerve to say the power to divide. Explain.
Well, Bishop,
because you do know jealousy and competition is at all levels.
Oh, it's
family, business,
yes,
ministry. It's so, you know, the power. I need to know, how do you divide this now? Talk to us,
Bishop. You know, here's the thing about jealousy, and oh my God, you know, jealousy can be such an evil and destructive force in our lives. And jealousy has one objective: to divide. It is very powerful at dividing. And I think, you know, you almost have to question what is the trigger for the jealousy. And in most cases, Bishop, in my personal experiences, you know, to be honest, I've been jealous at one point, didn't even realize why. But again, because I didn't know I didn't have a good understanding of who I was. You know, it can provoke feelings. You can see people with things and feel like you've been slighted. Right. You know, like, what in the world? How am I doing all of this? And this is what you have, and this is what I have.
Right.
And so a lot of times when it comes to jealousy, and especially, Bishop, when I talk about this in the book, there's so much, the statistics has proven there has been so much chaos among siblings because of jealousy. You dealing with, for example, let's take, for example, when it comes to parenting. It is easy, Bishop, especially have more than one, for those parents that have one or more children, well, two or more children. Sometimes, you know, when you have a child, I do too, there's one child that have these instincts and traits that you automatically connect to. They just like you.
Right, right.
And then it might be the other child that doesn't have it. And so you have to work a little bit harder on deepening that connection. And sometimes what you have is you could see a situation where in the family unit where siblings are jealous of one sibling, not even understanding the backdrop of the story. You could have 3 siblings growing up in a household, and 2 grew up at one period in time, and then 6 years later, another one come, and then the firstborn and the secondborn, they looking at the youngest child saying, how do you get all of this? Mom and dad did this for you. They didn't do it for me. But perhaps because of the lack of communication and the conversation, perhaps what that younger child doesn't know is that when mom and dad had you, maybe they desired to give you everything that the youngest child have, but perhaps they were not in the family, they were not in the financial position. Maybe life for them was different. They had the same desires, but maybe it just wasn't possible. I think when it comes to jealousy, people have to really have a good understanding of themselves. And it requires you to really check your heart about what's really driving the jealousy, and you not thinking that what somebody, how do you even know what somebody has belongs to you anyway? That may not even be what you want. But when you just look at it from, you know, from a wide shot angle, and you just, all you see is what you see. You see the grass, you see the greenery, but you don't see what it took to get there. You don't see all the pain that is even requiring for people to sustain where they are. And so often our world, you see it in the workplace, there's power struggles and people are jealous because this person has this position, this one has this position. And so I really take a moment to really explore jealousy and competition, because I really believe that's inspiring competition. Competition can be very healthy. It can inspire you to reach your goals, but competition that's not managed properly, with the right intentions and the right motives, can cause destructive behavior patterns, and it can cause destructive outcomes. And so it's something you got to be careful with that.
I love that. Competition is in all of us.
It's in all of us.
We want to be successful, but if your competition and the way you compete is not managed, I love that. If it's not managed, then it can get out of control.
It can, Bishop. I even say this with jealousy. Man, it's such a hard thing that when you get to a place where you can celebrate the successes and find joy in other people's success, there won't even be in a room for jealousy, especially in the family unit. As an example, I have siblings. One triumph for one child should be a call for the whole entire family to celebrate. Why? Because that's attached to our family legacy. And so to the degree that we start getting to understand of who we are, we start understanding our own unique gifts and talents, and really taking the step to really utilize those talents. Bishop, you got to get to the point where you're so busy with your next steps that you don't have time to focus on other people's journey. Right. And so I think that's one important key.
So let's segue into the 4 segments, or the 4 categories that you focused on in your book, the core lifestyle, take the leap, and win in challenging times. I take it that leap is referring to that leap of faith. Trust the moment, trust the character that God has built in you, trust the experiences like yourself. All of what you've been through has prepared you to win in challenging times. So as it relates to challenging times in family, you already talked about jealousy and competition in family. You just alluded to that. What else is this book saying towards family as it relates to the core lifestyle?
You know, Bishop, here's what's important. The family, if you want to look at the state of society, the state of our communities, the state of our culture, you have to go back to the family. The
Right.
family is the pivotal point. It is the foundation that shapes our interactions with people. It is where it is the first point of contact that helps us. It's where we discover how to treat people and how to treat one another. It is in the family unit that our foundations, good or bad, they're truly set. It influences what we learn and exposed to in family can have a major impact and influence on how we lead our own lives and how that leadership is it transcends into the workplace when we take on leadership positions and lead others. So the family unit is so important. So I talk about other things that relates to, you know, sweeping things under the rug, really getting to a place where you can have those conversations that addresses the division in the family, the struggles in the family. I really want us to get to a point, Bishop, that we give our family the best. And you really won't be able to do that if love is not at the foundation of it. And sometimes that can be scary, you know, getting to the point where we can come together and at the end of the day, we may disagree on every topic in the world. We may disagree on every circumstance in the world, but the blood ties that we have should remain. A brother is born for moments of adversity. And so it has to be, I gotta love my family so much that I will give you the truth, you know, but here's the key, Bishop. How do we communicate that to people?
Right.
You know, I learned this a long time ago. I don't confront issues to prove a point. I never confront issues to prove a point. Now, at one time I did, but I grew to a place of wisdom where I don't confront issues to prove a point. If I am addressing the issue or confronting a particular situation, you can rest assured it is solely for the purposes of reconciliation, repair, or to identify how we're going to move forward in a healthy way. And so I believe in an authentic and honest conversation, my point will be communicated just in a natural conversation where truth is present. And you see so many families can go to the cookouts. We can go to family gatherings and still listen, cut each other behind their backs, talk about, listen, Bishop, I come from a large family. I have seen every properly, any issue you can imagine, I've seen it. And sometimes the problem when we don't address these issues is what I've seen. Guess what happens? It becomes generational, where now when the siblings don't resolve their issues, it impacts the relationship among the cousins. And then what happens is natural. Children will stop communicating with their cousins because mom and daddy don't talk to the sister or that brother. And so I really want families to get to a place where you give your families the best. You know, I want parents to really give their children the level of time and attention to help them understand themselves. You know, this book I talk about marriages, you know, in the book, where we create healthy marriages. And let's face it, for some, perhaps you might need to, you know, we know God does not like divorce, but the reality is, the Bishop, trust me, I've seen enough in my own family. And sometimes I had to ask myself the question, why do y'all stay in these relationships? Like, why would you be married for 20 years and still upset and frustrated? And so I think this book is going to give people the courage to make hard decisions.
And sometimes in the church, I think because of the fact that we say God hates divorce, which he does, I'm a firm believer of that. Sometimes, you know, we fail to balance it out where either somebody's going to kill somebody or, you know, why should two people stay together if there's no intention of working the marriage God's way?
Bishop, that's it right there.
And because of that in the church, you know, many relationships are held hostage for that very reason. So you've touched on that. Let's go on here to the core lifestyle as it relates to relationships. Explain.
Oh, listen now, Bishop. You know, I love this one. I recognize, friendship, and this is dealing with, it applies to family, but it's really specifically related to relationships in general,
Right.
non-family relationships, just friendships in particular. And, that is something that people are, we all struggle with, who's for me, struggling with healthy relationships. And one of the things that I've learned in my process, and I've had friendships, Bishop, that I thought was going to last forever. And then some ended. And I had to realize not every relationship is meant to last forever.
Absolutely.
But I also have to assess what brought relationships to an end. And so there are things that I learned in the process. There are times where God would divinely protect us and just sever relationships. He will allow something to happen where it severs relationship. And there's other moments when I had to look back at myself, Bishop, and say, wow, what did I do to cause it? Because I really believe, honestly, I tell people like this, I say, if we be honest, I guarantee all of us probably can identify at least one, now probably more, but I believe all of us can identify at least one relationship that we regret, that Absolutely. It ended the way that it ended, or Absolutely. We regret that it ended at all. And then when we think about it, it was like, wait a minute, perhaps I got in the way of the relationship. And let me give you an example, Bishop. Because of the pain and the trauma that I experienced growing up and not being taught how to communicate effectively and manage the emotions, I would be the best at holding grudges. Now, let me just say this. I'm talking about, no, Bishop, when I tell you the best, my sister used to tell me, she said, you mean. And that would be a trigger for me because I knew I was not mean, but in those moments, it could have been perceived mean and here's the reason why. I used to let so much stuff ride, Bishop, because I dealt with so much chaos and pain and trauma in the house. Anything outside of the house, it was like, listen, I don't even have the time for it. Not realizing it was still having an emotional impact. And so I would just let it ride. And by the time you could catch me at the wrong time, on the wrong day or the right day, and I would give you what's due for you and anybody else. And we could be best friends, and I would really cut you off and really didn't care nothing about your feelings. And matter of fact, would hope that you would feel the pain that I felt. And I started looking at myself. I was like, oh my God, this is not God. This is not God. This is not right. And it's not a reflection of what I truly want to demonstrate, which is love. I genuinely love people, but unfortunately, there are moments where love didn't reflect love. And so it created some tension in relationships. I had to hurry up and shift that because a lot of times we can be in the way of our own friendships and relationships. There are times where people establish friendships and we establish friendships and relationships because of common interests. Maybe both of us like the same sports team. So we become associates. We start talking because we like the same sports team. But as we uncover and unpack the relationship, we realize, wait a minute, there's really no true substance here. Right. To that friendship.
I think when it comes to relationship, this is what I tell people, I think we become too sensitive to the transitions that happens with the people we deal with, from family to business associate, classmates, best friends, whatever, that we must understand that relationships is like a construction site.
Absolutely.
Always equated to a construction site. That I remember when I was building my home, the architect drafted up the concept. Picture was done. We know what it looked like. But then we had to go to a piece of property. The property had to be cleared. Well, there was a set of workers who came on site. They cleared the ground. Another set of workers. Now they left because their job is done.
Right.
Another set of workers came. They laid the foundation and concrete was poured. Pipes were laid. Then they left. Then a new set of guys with blocks, put in the blocks from the ground, the foundation, all the way up and so forth. Then the roofer came and started framing the roof. And I've watched the electrical guys and the plumbers. And then when everything was framed and windows were in, then they put up these scaffolds from the outside, scaffolds on the inside to reach the ceiling and to plaster the outside with cement and so forth. And I've watched people come in and out of that property. I would go there every week and I would watch different people. And I got to tell you, nobody stayed. The scaffolds had to come down. And people need to understand this, that when you understand that not everybody will remain in your life permanently.
Absolutely.
Not everybody. But there are some people. Now, I can tell you, what I've discovered is that all those workers who have left, they have left, watch this, the materials that building. I still have the walls. It's been 21 years, going 22 years. The walls are still there. The windows are still there. The flooring is still there. The roof is still there. The kinds of people we really need to pay attention to are the structural people, the people who are placed in our life. You know, I had to look up my phone because just recently I placed something on my Instagram page. Here's what it says, and it ties into what we're saying. It says, don't just let people into your intimate space. Let them earn the entrance. Because trust me, it cost you a lot for you at this stage of your life to discount the life you have built. In other words, don't discount the life you have built now.
Right.
All because you want just anybody in your life to stay in your life. And I think even with relationships, people are dating, they're watching us today. You know, have some core values. You know, take a leap of faith, yes, and say, I want to win at this. I want to end up getting married, all that kind of stuff. But you got to be careful. Just because, okay, you dated this person, you were hopeful that it worked, and it didn't work. Why are you sitting down for the rest of your life crying, moping over stuff? People have moved on. Sometimes you ought to be glad they left. Maybe God saved you.
Yes.
We could go on.
No, you know what? That's powerful, Bishop. That is, and I mean that the example that you gave is spot on with understanding those transitional moments.
Yes.
And when you talk about the structural friends, you're really talking about those. You're talking about a certain type of friend.
Oh, and they're very few.
Yeah,
and
it's very few.
They're not perfect. They're not perfect.
No, not at all.
Down. I can't tell you how many times I had to bring the plumber in my house to fix the pipes. I can't tell you how many times I had to bring the AC guy to tune up my AC, different things. There are no perfect friends. And this is the problem. When friends and you get into an altercation, an argument is about something, when you're in a person and who consider you friend, when they can't handle you confronting them, you're telling them, confronting the challenges. When they can't handle you being honest, upfront, watch this. Even if you are wrong, the fact that I confronted Kevin, I didn't like what you did. You're crazy. Your hair looked funny. Your face looked funny. You got a bad nose. Even if I might not have approached it right, tell me your feelings. Tell me you were hurt. And let's come to an agreement. All right. You may not agree with me. I may not agree with you, but we'll never sacrifice our friendship.
Now, you know, Bishop, you hit on something, because a couple of things that you just said are core values that are in the book, because that type of friend won't cover up any looming issues.
That's it.
That type of friend will always be authentic. They're going to be true, and they're going to honor the relationship by telling you the truth and understand that, listen, I'm in it. If I'm a true friend, people used to tell me all the time. My brother told me this years ago. He said, Kevin, I don't know where you get this patience from. You got so much patience. And folk would tell me, why are you going after those people? Well, I realized, Bishop, I'm not going to live any life. I'm not going to live my life with regrets. If I call you a friend, trust me, it will be proven, especially in moments of difficulty, because I understand, as you said, no one is perfect. But if I value you the way that I say I value you, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to give you an opportunity for us to kind of reconcile. Now, what we have to be prepared for, there will be moments where the desired outcome will happen. They will be ready to talk and they will be ready to reconcile. But you also have to be prepared that perhaps in the end, you may realize the people don't value you like you value them.
Yeah.
You may discover that they once had a place of value. Maybe you once had a place of value in their life, but their priorities have now changed.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people this, I don't have any regrets when I lose friends now or people walk out of my life now, because by the time it's all said and done, I would have done everything in my power as a friend to really address the issue from a place of love, number one, number two, truth and integrity, and being transparent with the goal in mind to come to a place of understanding. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about those, that's the structural, that internal component that really keeps that house together. And if we have to depart, hey, I can let you leave now without having any ill feelings. Mm-hmm. Bishop, years ago, it was challenging for me to ask for me to forgive. Mm-hmm. And so my confession had to change. I had to start praying nearly 20 years ago. God, help me to forgive quick and make it easy for me to forgive. Mm-hmm. And so those are the things. And that's why we have to be careful, even when we're dealing with our enemies, because the love still has to be the forefront. You're going to notice throughout this book, love and truth and integrity are common themes throughout the book in any moment. And I'll never forget, I realized that there are some people that are enemies to us. And then there's people that are perceived to be enemies. And I realized this there, an enemy has a goal in mind to really destroy me. But then there are people who had hurt me in such a way that I thought they were my enemy, but really they were hurt themselves and insensitive to what I was going through. And I really prayed, and Bishop, the Lord spoke to me and he said, Kevin, I want you to always remember this when it comes to your enemies. I gave your enemies purpose. Even they have a purpose on the earth. And right. So now what I want you to do, I want you to see them through my eyes, where even your prayers regarding them change. The negative influences that is controlling their life, then guess what? As a believer, we pray differently. I pray differently, like God, whatever has infiltrated their life and has a grip on their life, I renounce and destroy and break that particular stronghold over their life. But now, practically speaking, you got to use wisdom. We can't be connected right now.
Right. We've got 5 minutes to wrap this up. Let's deal with leadership, the core lifestyle of leadership.
Real quickly, Bishop, I was taught growing up that leadership was influence. And I later discovered in my interactions with people, and as I got involved in leadership and have been in leadership in corporate America, nonprofit, etc., in the community, I later understood that influence is a major component of leadership, but influence alone is not sufficient. Influence is the reason why our nation is in chaos right now. And so we can be in leadership positions and still influence people toward a bad path or a negative path. The catalyst to the highest affirming level of leadership is love. And I think what's missing, Bishop, we have too many people today that's in leadership positions that don't love people. Mm-hmm. And so love has to be the foundation. And in the book, I talk about groundbreaking leadership, because there are so many leaders that are leading and they're still broken from their childhood trauma, past issues, and that has seeped over into the workplace. It's crept into how they manage our communities and other entities that they oversee. And so many people now go to work just to get a paycheck. They have no ambition. They have no dreams, no desires in the workplace. Communities are, we're confused. We don't know which direction to go. Wow. Leaders tend to be so self-centered. And I think we got to go back to this foundation where we lead from a place of love, because love demands that I work on the issues that impact how I lead you. Love demands that I consider you in my decisions. Love demands that I really recognize, wait a minute, these are the people that's pushing me to accomplish my goals and my vision. So love demands that I manage you and lead you a certain way. Love demands that I tell you the truth when you make a bad decision or a bad choice and show you a clear path forward. And so we really got to get to a place in leadership where we break ground on our own hearts to the point where we can lead with love and we can be mindful of everybody. It's like pride and humility. This is where wisdom comes in. Wisdom considers everybody involved. Now, the outcome in a decision may not favor everybody, may not make everybody feel good, but wisdom will always consider the outcome that is best for everybody, the circumstance. On the other hand, pride will only merit what concerns me. And so as leaders, I've learned this as leaders, I try my best to make sure, I talk about this when decisions are made, that the people who have to execute it and carry it out, that the decisions are made with them in mind as well. And so from a leadership perspective, this part of the book is really going to challenge leaders to become better leaders, more loving leaders and caring leaders, because after all, leadership at its best, Bishop, is a service to the people in our care. And we have to see people as a gift. All of us, even in relationships, we're a gift to one another. And when I got that concept, it really challenged me to really care for people differently, manage them differently, build relationships differently, because I recognize leadership at its best is an act of service to the people in our care. And God has given all of us in some form or fashion people to care for us. The last thing I would say, Bishop, you don't have to be in a leadership role to start leading people. The moment that one person follows your direction, you're leading somebody. But the key is growing to a point of using the wisdom of God and being honest with ourselves, where we can lead ourselves in such an effective way that it spills over into a positive impact on those that we're leading. So I challenge myself every day. I'm always checking my heart. I'm always checking my attitude. I'm checking everything that concerns me from a leadership perspective.
Right.
Wait a minute, is this right today?
Quickly, the core lifestyle when it comes to personal fulfillment, and we'll wrap it up.
Bishop, endure your way to the win. In the journey, and I know you know this. I know you know this really, really good. I mean, you talk about faith all the time because faith is critical. As we pursue our goals, our ambitions, you're going to have to power your way through moments of rejection. You're going to have to power your way through moments of uncertainty. I remember at one point in my life, Bishop, I was trying to get a job. I was going through a dark place in my life, and I was trying to get a job opportunity that I knew I was qualified for and got turned down for it. Tried for another one, got turned down for it. And then when I got turned down the second time, I said, no, I heard from God. This is for me. I contacted the recruiter and said, listen, I applied for this job twice and you guys turned me down twice at the same point in the interview. But let me share with you some things that I didn't share on my resume that I think would be valuable to your organization. Bishop, long story short, it was a 3-panel interview with 3 executives. They were about to make their decisions, had interviewed 5 people. The recruiter called me back and said, Mr. Tucker, the executive said before they make their decision, they want to talk to you first. History has been written. I ended up getting the job and was in that role for 5 years until they changed the company, that role in the company. But I had to power my way through it, Bishop. Even, I had to power my way through it. Timing is sometimes timing matters.
Right. Wow. Well, Pastor Kevin, thank you so much. You have done well. The core lifestyle. Take the leap and win in challenging times. And I think all of our listeners today can relate to this book, that yes, we are living in challenging times as it relates to our family, relationships, leadership, and our personal pursuits, right? And I would encourage all of you, the information is on the screen. Please go and get a copy of Pastor Kevin's new book, The Core Lifestyle. It was a pleasure talking to you today, Pastor Kevin. I know the listeners and those who watched really enjoyed it. Please tell someone about this podcast. I really appreciate it. Once again, thanks for joining us.